truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth. You can't hide.
Welcome to the Coop Files, clarification and opinion. So what I wanted to do was, if there's anything that I feel that I need to clarify, anything that I wasn't happy with in a previous presentation, or something that I maybe just got slightly, I didn't put it across very well, then it's an opportunity for me to offer clarification and also offer opinion on certain events that might be going on out in clown world. I think I've said previously that I didn't want this show to be a news broadcast, and I want to stick to the subject matter, but sometimes it's quite difficult to do that with a lot of the nonsense which actually goes on out in clown world that some people still actually just believe in or are unaware of, what have you. So it's an opportunity to offer clarification and opinion. So the first thing I wanted to just sort of go over briefly again is the subject of queer Stalin and the Netflix drama Adolescence, which Stalin called a documentary, and the documentary was partly funded by this institution called Tender, which has received government grants to the tune of £2.2 million of your money. And one of the points I wanted to make was when I was talking about the MP Dan Norris, who's been arrested on allegations of child rape, I just wanted to point out the irony and the hypocrisy that Stalin is standing there calling this drama, this fictional drama, a documentary, blaming the working class white nuclear family and their 13-year-old son, blaming that demographic for certain problems in this country. And he's pushing that absolute propaganda while harboring a child rapist. That was the point I wanted to make, and I don't think I'm not even sure I made it, let alone whether I made it clear. But hopefully that's provided some clarification on that. On the subject of Netflix, which is where the fictional documentary was streamed, which is most people's go-to place for their propaganda these days. On the subject of Netflix, I just wanted to go over a little bit of information about the CEO and who he's linked to. On the screen there, you've got Mark Bernays Randolph in the middle, Edward Bernays at the top centre there, Sigmund Freud at the bottom right, Oedipus, the top right there. Oedipus was a mythical character from back in the day, ancient Greek mythical character. Oedipus, so the myth goes that he discovered one day that he had killed his father and he was married to his mother. What's the point? Hopefully it'll become clear. And then the bottom left there is the young version of the Lizard King, probably before he knew he was a lizard, let alone the king of the lizards. That's Jim Morrison, already in trouble with the law. Oops. Bear with me. So just how do these people link? Okay, so Mark Randolph is an American tech entrepreneur, advisor, and speaker. He's the co-founder and first CEO of Netflix. One of his paternal grand uncles was psychoanalysis pioneer Sigmund Freud. So Freud was one of the first, or the first, to come up with the the psychoanalysis element to psychology. Another paternal great uncle of Randolph was Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was an American pioneer, so another pioneer in the field of public relations and propaganda, referred to in his obituary as the father of public relations, or PR. So really, whenever you see the term PR or public relations, it is propaganda. While credited with advancing the profession of public relations, his techniques have been criticized for manipulating public opinion, often in ways that undermined individual autonomy and democratic values, because it's manipulation, so you're not making a decision through informed consent. His best-known campaigns included a 1929 effort to promote female smoking by branding cigarettes as feminist torches of freedom. You'd be more freer if you smoked like the men do. Like you see all of the men in the movies back in the day all smoking, but the women didn't. You want equality? Feminists, smoke. And his work for the United Fruit Company in the 1950s, his connection to the CIA orchestrated overthrow of the democratically elected Guatemalan government in 1954. So he was known for these are what he was best known for: the torches of freedom, working for the United Fruits Company, and overthrowing a democratically elected government. That's how powerful the manipulation is. That's how powerful propaganda is. He outlines the science of managing information released to the public by an organization in a manner most advantageous to the organization. So it doesn't whoever is contracted to, he will go out of his way to manage information in a way which is most advantageous to the organization. Or like Netflix, producing these fictional documentaries. His work has been linked to the rise of modern propaganda techniques that some argue have eroded democratic engagement and suppressed dissent. You're telling me. He's worked for dozens of major American corporations, including Procter & Gamble and General Electric, and for government agencies, politicians, and non-profit organizations, like Tender. So this is a high-level psychological manipulator working for government agencies and politicians, overthrowing governments. This is not just about, selling cigarettes, or what was one of these other ones? It was to add an egg to a cake mix. So the cake mix, as a product, it was a complete flop. This company had created this instant cake mix, and it was a complete flop. And he worked out that, so he was hired by the company, and he worked out that it's probably a flop because women don't want to feel like they're not putting their love and care into baking and cooking. You know, back in these times in the 50s, you know, that was your stereotypical role of the woman, was to stay at home, look after the children, cook the meal, and make a nice cake. You know, the what is it, the key to a man's heart is through his stomach. So he worked out that probably the women weren't buying the instant cake mix because it was lazy, and there was no love had gone into it, no love and care, and there was no way that they were going to serve that trash to the hard-working husband. So it's all the instant cake mix. All you did, I think, was just add some water, mix it up, blah blah blah, whatever. So he came up with the idea of just adding, and obviously there was no instructions, or there was very little instructions because it was just about adding water. So he came up with the idea of, in the instructions, adding an egg, and then the marketing, the branding of the cake mix was then just add an egg. And then the product absolutely flew off the shelves, off the supermarket shelves, and it became a household, you know, in everybody's cupboard across America was this ready-made cake mix, simply by adding to the instructions, just add an egg. And the reason that that worked was, there was two reasons. One was because the mother and the wife thought that it wasn't a cheat, because there was something to do, and it did give us more of a sense of actually making a proper mix by putting in the egg and beating it through and all the rest of it. But it wasn't just that was the conscious, but there was probably subconscious, but it might have been on a conscious level as well, that women were making that, they thought they were making that informed decision because, oh well, I'll just buy that. It saves us a bit of time, but I still have to add an egg. I still have to actually beat it and da da da. But on a subconscious level, the egg is a sign of fertility. And obviously that tugs on a woman's heartstrings subconsciously, the egg being a sign, the symbol of fertility. So he was using very, very, very clever subconscious techniques to manipulate people into buying something that they don't need. That nobody needed this cake mix. The household was fine, the women were fine the way they were, making cakes from scratch. Anyway, bleated on about that enough. But that's the level of manipulation. It's very, very, very clever. And his uncle was psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud. We've all heard of the Freudian slip, which is when somebody says something which is completely inappropriate, but on a subconscious level, maybe that's what they actually meant, and that's what they're actually thinking, and that's just the truth coming out. So that was Sigmund Freud. He was an Austrian neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis, a clinical method for evaluating and teaching pathologies seen as originating from conflicts within the psyche. Psychoanalysis is a set of theories and therapeutic techniques that deal in part with the consciousness and unconscious mind. So you see how these two characters were, one had obviously influenced the other, and the idea of playing to the conscious mind, but also the unconscious mind, which is much, much, much more powerful. In founding psychoanalysis, Freud developed therapeutic techniques such as the use of free association and discovered transference, establishing its central role in the analytic process. Freud's redefinition of sexuality to include its infantile forms led him to formulate the Oedipus complex at the as the central tenet of psychoanalytical theory. So his redefinition of sexuality to include its infantile forms led him to formulate the Oedipus complex as the central tenet to psychoanalytical theory. Oedipus complex refers to a son's sexual attitude towards his mother and associated hostility towards his father, first formed during the phallic stage of psychosexual development. The theory is named for the mythological figure Oedipus, an ancient Theban king who discovers he has unknowingly murdered his father and married his mother. So that was his main tenet of psychoanalytical thinking, that a lot of a, a lot of behaviors stem from what was going on during a child's development, during the psychosexual development. Some critics have argued that Freud, by abandoning his earlier seduction theory, which attributed neurosis to childhood sexual abuse, so he abandoned that theory and he replaced it with the theory of the Oedipus complex. Some critics have argued that that instigated a cover-up for sexual abuse of children. So in other words, neurosis, if somebody's suffering from neurosis, then it might be linked to childhood sexual abuse. And obviously, if there's a theory or a tenet which attributes neurosis to childhood sexual abuse, then obviously that can be looked into, and that can be revealed, and you can deal with that problem in the wider society if it's happening a lot. However, by replacing that theory with the Oedipus complex, i.e., it was just taught people who are suffering psychological issues, it might just be due to something which formed during the phallic stage of psychosexual development. So obviously, if that's your theory, then you're never going to uncover all of these child abuse crimes, to put it another way, which is quite unusual. That I've literally just been talking about, these child rape protectors, and now here I am talking about sexual abuse of children through Netflix. But the main point I'm trying to make is Netflix is a propaganda machine. It's a huge, huge propaganda machine pushing out agendas and pushing out manipulation to get people to think and therefore act in a certain way on whatever topic. Adolescence was just one of those, because most people are so ignorant and so unaware of any of this, how the subconscious mind works. They will fall for the propaganda, and by fall for the propaganda, they will think it's real. They will buy into anything that's pushed through the television, even if it's a fictional movie or a fictional drama, because the subconscious mind is so powerful unless you're completely aware that all you're watching is pure fiction, unless you're aware of that, your subconscious mind will take it in and think it's real, because we weren't we weren't created for watching television. So you know, the television is only whatever it is, 70, 80 years old in terms of being in everybody's home. How long have humans been on the planet for? Our brain is not fully equipped to deal with watching television in terms of recognizing uh, fact from fiction, unless we're totally aware and we bring it to the conscious awareness and to that part of the psyche. That's why some people who, religiously watch soap operas, that's why when they meet the people, they do believe it's the person on the television. This is a well-known phenomenon. It's a propaganda tool, and it's clearly being used for government propaganda. And it's the streaming service is a tool through, as you can see, the family bloodlines. They've always been into these themes. I don't know anything else about Mark Bernays, Randolph. I've never paid any attention to him other than the fact of where he comes from in terms of his family, his bloodlines. So this reminded me of the Doors song, at the end, when Morrison confesses to wanting to kill his father and his mother. So if anybody's familiar with the Doors, they'll know exactly which part of this of which song I'm talking about. It's when he goes into it's kind of a monologue. He's not singing; he's more telling a story. So he confesses to wanting to kill his father and his mother. And so it just reminded me of that, and having researched that further, sure enough, that's exactly what it is. He's actually talking, um, or singing, telling a story as a reference to the Oedipus complex. That's a fact, or certainly that's how it's presented to us. If you look up the meaning of that song, um, and I would just ask this question: therefore, was Morrison a victim of abuse? Because he certainly behaved like, he was off the rails completely. He certainly acted like somebody who was abused at a young age. Morrison's father was uh, an admiral and in the military, and he was an admiral on the ship which was involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident. This is an incident which um, almost single-handedly, um, put America into the Vietnam War, or certainly escalated it to a point where the public relations was at a point where it was supported. That was Jim Morrison's father. He was the admiral on that ship, one of the ships. This is widely accepted as a false flag. In other words, manipulation, propaganda, and it escalated a war. And then Morrison comes out as the king of the counterculture, the lizard king, the king of the counterculture movement, the anti-war movement. And that's just I'm meant to believe that that's just a coincidence. It's So if the pretext to the war was a false flag, i.e., it didn't happen the way you were told it happened, then is Morrison a false flag? So his father is completely, almost single-handedly responsible for escalating the war, and Morrison is almost single-handedly responsible for leading the counterculture movement. That's not a coincidence. But again, the whole counterculture movement and the hippie scene looks like a CIA-controlled experiment using LSD and other manipulation and mind control techniques. So, was Morrison just another patsy? Did he actually know his own mind? More evidence of propaganda. The fact that these actors are put in front of us and we follow them because we've bought the propaganda. Right, Lucy Powell, leader of the House of Commons, Labour MP, high-ranking member of the cult. It is her on the subject of child rape. Oh, we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we? That was what she was recorded as having said when an opposing member of parliament or opposing politician brought up the subject of child rape in this country. A dog whistle in politics refers to the use of coded or suggestive language in political messaging that targets specific groups while remaining innocuous to the general public. So it would be suggestive language in political messaging that targets specific groups while remaining innocuous to the general public. So it's the idea that you would just a politician in a debate or an argument would just say something to get support from the general public on that issue, so that targeting a specific group, it might be the whole of the general public, to get support, but it's innocuous and it can't really be opposed by the other side. But the politician using the dog whistle is just saying it to get support for maybe a wider issue. So it's about manipulating the public into getting their support on an issue by using a suggestive language in your debate that's going to get their attention and get them to support you. I think I've explained that correctly. It's otherwise, in other words, it's like you're just saying something to get support. Dog whistle. Let's have a little listen. It's the first guy. He rambles on for a bit. He's on about some sort of issue in certain councils, where they're sort of one party areas, been in there for too long. They're getting too comfortable in their own bed, so to speak. Anyway, bear with it because it's important to hear the context. So just bear with me. Bear with that bit. Sorry.
I do think of having new people in politics. There's an awful lot of councils in this country that have almost been one-party states for a long time. They've been run by one party that hasn't been challenged, and often there's sort of a cosy relationship between officials and those councillors. One good thing is having a new party is that it asks difficult questions. There's no legacy of vested interests. And there is a real issue, I think, with, you mentioned the diversity issue. I think Britain is one of the most tolerant countries in the world, and always need to be more progress on racial issues, always needs to be more progress. But it's not so much the amount of money that is spent on employing diversity officers. You talk to a lot of civil servants. The amount of time they now have to spend monitoring this issue above all others is an extraordinary diversion.
What absolute nonsense.
It absolutely is true. Absolutely is true.
I mean,
And
honestly.
it's a culture that governs
Go
a lot
and sit
of
in
the...
a council for a day and actually see what they're dealing with. Actually see what they're dealing with. You've got no idea, I'm afraid.
How are Labour... I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
Oh,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah, okay.
There was a real issue
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Okay, Lucy. Yeah. The councils, there were so many people who were so afraid.
So that was Lucy Powell. We want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we? So you could hear that the guy he had kind of lost the argument. I'm not saying he had lost the argument per se, but obviously you could hear people cheering for her comments on that first debate. And then he goes straight into the subject of the child rape cover-up in this country. And it's at that point that she makes her comments, and she's suggesting that he's only bringing this up to gain support on a subject that is, you can't really go against, and that he's just using it as a political tactic. And people have, in the alternative media world or social media, people have called for her resignation. People have said that it's insulting towards these victims. It's insulting towards the idea that we need some sort of inquiry anyway to, discover the scope of this problem. And it's all of those things. But what I found interesting was, I don't know how long this phrase has been about, maybe since the 80s. Might be wrong on that, but what I find interesting is the use of the word dog whistle. Because who is the whistle directed towards? It's directed towards the public. It's directed towards the people that vote for these complete delusional sociopaths and communists like her. And that's what I find most telling, is that they just call you a dog right to your face, and nobody picks up on this. Here, this next subject, with me. So this is just something that came into my feed recently. This character, Paul Thorpe, doing the Freemasonic hand gesture there, and his pal there that you can see on the bottom picture. Can't recall his name. Anyway, these are some two characters who have quite a substantial following. I'm led to believe on platforms such as YouTube, and they've, over the last 12 months or so, again, watch his video, that one at the bottom, you can see the thumbnail there with the police lamp on it. Watch the video for yourself if you're interested. It came across my feed and I was curious as to what was going on. So these are two characters who are quite popular within the alternative media scene, shall we say, or political scene. The fake right, you could say. They've been doing politically driven videos and content for the last 12 months or so, and they've been pushing, obviously, the usual suspects of the fake right, which is Mr. Lennon, who's currently allegedly in prison, and Farage, the Donald Trump of the UK. They're pushing that side of the political agenda, and apparently, well, I'm saying apparently, this is the testimony. So the fella in the bottom picture there in the middle, he told this story about coming home from Spain, because I think he lives in Spain, but his daughter and his ex-wife live over here, and the other guy, Paul Thorpe, I think he spends a lot of time in Spain because he's got family over there, if I've got that right. So this guy tells a story about coming home to the UK to see his daughter and his ill father, and he gets detained at the airport when he arrives in the UK, in the pen, as they call it, and then he's detained for. You're allowed to be detained for up to 6 hours without any, bringing any sort of charges or anything like that under the Terrorism Act of the UK. So apparently this was a traumatic ordeal for him. They obviously explained to him that he was being detained under that act, and this caused him quite a bit of upset and trauma, apparently. And then eventually he was allowed to go because obviously they didn't have anything to charge him with. Obviously, he should have known that, because he should know that he's not what they're claiming him to be, or holding him as a terrorist. He should know that he's not one. But anyway, the whole story went on for about an hour, and it ends with them both agreeing that they're not going to do any more political content on their channels. They've got huge, well, I'm saying huge, they've got decent sized followings on their channels, and obviously they're pushing against the system, or so they think. And the end result is just fear. The end result is just causing anxiety amongst people who do their own content, who are challenging the narrative or challenging the system. That was the end result of this video. And so I'm going to suggest that that's what the intention of this whole thing was. Because at the end of the day, if you believe that there's a problem, and if you believe that talking about it and spreading awareness is the solution, then what's the point in throwing in the towel? What's that going to do? And they both sort of made the excuse of they're thinking about their own health, and they're thinking about their own grandchildren, and they're doing it for their grandchildren. And I'm thinking, well, there is no future for your grandchildren unless we stop the complete tyranny and slavery which is going on, and it's just going to get worse. So I don't understand how giving in is gonna protect your grandchildren. It seemed very, I don't know. There was a need to persuade, put it that way, on the part of this person who was detained, who alleges to have been detained. And I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying there was a real need to persuade throughout his story, and there was some odd signs, like on some of the detail he was very, very sketchy, but on some he was very, 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 very clear. Minute details he could remember, but then on general things like how long you were there, he didn't seem to have a real recollection of that. It just seemed a bit of an act, if you ask me. It's just the feeling I got. Another thing that he was very, very, very eager to get across was how much he respected the order followers who were carrying out their orders and detaining him, stripping him of his rights, and holding him for 6 hours without any charges. Apparently, they were really, really nice. And he said this 3 or 4 times where he couldn't stress it enough. And they are both supporters of the order followers. So there's another red flag to me, because these are the people who are doing this to you. No politician is doing this to you. It's the order followers that are doing it to you. So how can you have the utmost respect for the people who are doing this to you? It just... Child can work this out, or should be able to work this out. Every single tyranny in history, bar none, and every single tyranny in the future will have come to pass through the people who are willing to enact the immoral orders. That's it. End of story. There is no... How many people did the man with the mustache physically harm or kill? How many? And how many were at the behest of orders that immoral people were willing to follow? They are your enemy. They are the people who are going to carry out the orders which are going to enslave your grandchildren. It's so simple, and it's so frustrating watching these people. And they are pushing the Farage narrative, and the whole Mr. Lenin, the support of Mr. Lenin and Farage, and that whole fake right, which is where the pendulum's going to swing next. It's going to swing to the fake right. We're going to get another fake leader who people are going to be shouting out for because the current communist regime is so bad. And I think this is just part of that manipulation. The alternative media, it will have obviously its shills and its controlled opposition within it. And I'm not saying these two people know what they're doing. I'm not saying that. This might be a true story. What I'm saying is they are being used to get people fearful of putting content out, and also get people up in arms, and they're more likely to vote for the complete buffoon Farage. And when I say buffoon, they're all buffoons, they're all actors. So why would I not think these two are actors? Apparently he doesn't know why he got detained. I mean, I never heard him. I watched the video and I never heard him once say why he was detained, what it was that led to them detaining him. I don't know. Maybe they don't tell you. Maybe it was because you were going to see Mr. Lennon in prison. Maybe if you stopped doing that, you would stop getting detained. So this Paul Thorpe was one of the UK's leading and most established independent watch dealers. He is now a journalist, social media influencer, crime fighter, and campaigner for social justice, apparently. He spent 4 years in the world of professional boxing and 4 years working at a Premiership football club. I think he might have been a boxer as well, at some level. He's appeared on the BBC, RTV, Sky News, LBC, BBC Radio, and in many newspapers such as The Times. So he's an establishment asset. Whichever way you look at it, he's part of the establishment. That's what that reads to me. He's also the founder of Unite UK, a patriotic movement that aims to unite everyone who shares our love for traditional British values and British culture. He has interviewed Lenin and attended and spoken at several of his demonstrations. And I got this from Hope Not Hate. I am not promoting Hope Not Hate. I'm just saying that's where he is. He's on their radar as one of Lenin's lackeys, for want of a better word. And if he's on the radar of an organisation like that, then you're more than just a YouTuber. You're obviously heavily associated with Lenin. He's also behind something called the Pledge, which aims to return power to the British people in order to defend our freedom. Freedom. We're slaves. Our family, our faith, and our home. It sounds very noble and patriotic, doesn't it? A few things stand out in his charter that I'm just going to pick up on. He believes in democracy, right, which is the right of UK citizens to self-government through representative government. Representative government. Nobody can represent you. It's impossible. It's a total fallacy. As a people, we can't be represented. You can only present yourself. Nobody can represent you. Can I represent you? Can you represent me? No. It's a total fallacy, democracy. The idea that 51% can decide what 49% of people do, and the 49% of people have zero say. I mean, you're ruled by immoral sociopaths who just make things up as they go along. Yeah, that's great. It's a great system, isn't it? He believes in the sovereignty of the individual over their own lives and bodies. He believes we were born free, will remain free, and believes our freedoms are God-given. It sounds like the Christian Reich, which is going to come along with a Farage when the pendulum swings and all of the numpty voters bring in Farage in some way, shape or form. There's also going to be a rise in Christianity, I believe. And you believe in sovereignty over your own lives and bodies. Well, how can you also believe in government? Those two things do not go together. I've proven that. Born free, will remain free, and believes our freedoms are God-given. Well, I agree with that statement, but we are not free. We are slaves. This is a slave system where the government claim ownership over you. It's again, this is the fake right playing a role, playing a part. He supports electoral reform to create a system of government that represents all citizens. You can't represent one person, let alone all citizens. It's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. There is no transparency on either the website or the Facebook page for this pledge thing. There's no transparency on either the website or Facebook. Who knows where your details are going if you sign up? It's very, very, very suspicious. Data harvesting, data gathering, for all I know. So anyway, it all seems like a bit of an act. And then I came across this just by pure chance. This is a movie called Duty from 1995. There's a character played by somebody called Paul Thorpe. The character is called Goliath, and that's him there. This is in 1995, so this is what, 25, 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, could that be Paul Thorpe? Let's have a look. Slowed this down, but just so you can see better.
Take a seat, boy.
Yeah, come on, kid.
Gets on his toes
Get
like a
it.
boxer, doesn't he?
I have the tea.
So is that him? Let's have another look.
Take a seat, boy.
Yeah, come
Different
on,
nose.
kid.
Could have had a nose
Get
job
it.
if he
I
is
have the
obviously has been into boxing. That could be a possibility. So anyway, it just made us, obviously this caught me attention, and I thought, is that him? He's been in a plethora of movies, just bit parts like this. But thoughts in the comments. Is he an actor? And yeah, an actor can have a YouTube channel 30 years later and have a political message. But he was very, very, very adamant that he had nothing in this, i.e., he didn't have any ulterior motive, and that he's squeaky clean. But there's nowhere on his bio anywhere that he's an actor or that he was an actor. Has he been tapped for a part? Just a question. So I thought I'd ask Chat GPT the same question. Sent the video, and the chat came back. Here's my detailed, honest assessment based on what I see. Feel free to pause and have a read of all that. I'm not going to read it all out. The bottom line, according to Chat GPT, I would say there is an 80 to 90% chance this is the same Paul Thorpe who played Goliath in Jury Duty. So I got Chat GPT to analyze the movie and analyze that a recent YouTube upload by Paul Thorpe. In short, yes, this could very well be the same Paul Thorpe. Nothing in the video contradicts it. The cosmetic changes you mentioned actually make it more likely it's him, not less. So, news in the UK. Moving on. Britain to approve £50 million sun dimming experiments in a bid to prevent runaway climate change. It's running away now. So these are experiments. Nobody asked us if we could be experimented on. Britain is set to approve funding of up to 50 million for outdoor experiments to dim sunlight as part of efforts to combat runaway climate change. The Advanced Research and Invention Agency will announce the funded projects within weeks, making Britain one of the world's biggest funders of geoengineering research. Professor Mark Sims, ARIA's program director, confirmed there would be small, controlled outdoor experiments on particular approaches. The controversial technology aims to reflect sunlight back into space, potentially providing a temporary break on rising global temperatures while emission reduction efforts continue. So these are just going to be experiments that they'll carry out in the UK, and who knows what the effects or the side effects of those experiments are going to be. And it was interesting that this was announced by the government, so this is taxpayers' money that's stolen from you. And this was announced on the 23rd of April, which in the UK is St. George's Day, and a lot of people complaining about that because we never get to celebrate our national day. It's never promoted like the Irish St. Patrick's Day, for example, and you often get English patriots who have a bit of a chip on their shoulder about that, and they think that this is just another kick in the teeth on St. George's Day. So this is from the BBC. Controversial experiments exploring the science around reflecting sunlight with an aim to bring about global cooling have been announced. ARIA, a government-backed body, is funded nearly up to 60 million now. That could allow real-world experiments, including in the UK. As part of the cooling programme, projects in solar radiation modification will involve trying to thicken Arctic sea ice and make clouds more reflective. But critics have real concerns about the impact of SRM on weather patterns and our health, seeing it as a distraction to distract decarbonisation. So the concerns or the controversy is, yeah, they have mentioned weather patterns and health there, but the controversy is more around the fact that it's just a distraction, and it's going to distract around the runaway climate change problem and the fact that we need to decarbonise. That's the controversy, not what it's going to do to our health and what it's going to do to weather patterns. It's the fact that it's going to be used as a distraction, and that's controversial. Geoengineering is the process of artificially modifying the atmosphere and climate. Modification techniques which try to mimic the natural cooling that occurs after the eruption of volcanoes releasing ash and gases are some of the most controversial. ARIA program director Mark Sims said, "There is a critical missing gap in our knowledge on the feasibility and impacts of this type of modification, and to fill that gap requires real-world outdoor experiments." So your lab rats, or we here in the UK, are officially lab rats to these experiments. All in the name of the climate cult. Global average temperatures in 2024 were running at 1.6 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, temporarily exceeding the target set out by the 2015 Paris Agreement. Current trajectories show the world passing 1.5 degrees Celsius of long-term warming by the end of the early 2030s. While extreme weather is a consequence of climate change, there are concerns of abrupt and potentially irreversible shifts in the climate system. Some of these shifts are so-called tipping points, such as a collapse of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation might be closer to happening within the next century than we'd like. While every effort should still be made to reduce global emissions, there is a growing scientific community looking at geoengineering, specifically the solar radiation modification. They will also fund a modelling-based project that would investigate mirrors or shades deployed into space. Mirrors or shades deployed into space. The cult, they're absolutely insane, messing around with the weather and geoengineering, spraying particles into the sky, putting mirrors and shades in space. They're absolutely insane. And notice how they say that it may be closer to happening within the next century than we'd like. So we're never, ever, ever going to know if this has worked. In other words, for as long as we're alive, for as long as our children and the youngest of people today are alive, as long as they're alive, we're never going to know A, if it works, and B, if there was ever a problem anyway. Anyway, this is just going to go on forever and ever and ever based on these models. And nothing's going to happen, nothing at all. Yeah, there might be some extreme weather events, but they could be due to the geoengineering, which we know they've done for decades anyway. So when there's an extreme weather event, how on earth are you going to know if it's natural or if it's geoengineered? I mean, obviously they'll tell us it's natural or it's due to climate change, but I'm certainly not going to automatically believe them. Another professor of planetary physics at Oxford University is extremely worried about solar radiation management. And so I'm expecting him to say, well, the impact it's going to have on our sort of natural weather events, potentially negative impacts, and the impact on our health and maybe on food supplies, being able to grow crops and things like that. But no, people want this is why he's extremely worried. People want a plan B if we don't reduce global emissions. But there really is no plan B. It just kicks the can down the road because solar geoengineering doesn't take away the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So that's why he's worried. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's just a distraction. So they're going to do these experiments, but they're not going to make any difference to anything. They're still going to push ahead with the net zero cult agenda. And they're just going to, this is never going to end. And they're going to constantly do things which are harmful to both the environment and to us. And then and still push ahead with their net zero. They're just never satisfied. It's never enough. They've got their agenda, and these people who work in the institutions, the universities, they're completely obsessed with the lie. They've bought the lie, and they're completely obsessed with it, and they can't let go because it's their income, it's their livelihood. They need to be needed. From The Independent, it's thought to be a relatively cheap way to cool the planet, but critics have warned it could cause, so there are some critics who've warned it could cause catastrophic disruption to weather patterns and even shift rain away from areas that are vital food production. Why St. George's Day? So this is the real reason it was St. George's Day, because we know we live in a cult. And it's an ancient sun worshipping cult. Well, it's actually they worship the sun, the moon, and the stars. It's a stellar cult, stellar, solar, lunar cult. And the particular faction that we live in here in the UK, like many other places, is the solar cult. So St. George's Day. So St. George was a Roman soldier who became a martyr for his Christian faith. And then at some point, the myth of the slaying the dragon was added on. And the dragon, there was a dragon in the city, in the town, and it was feeding off the resources, i.e. the cattle. And then when all the cattle was done, it demanded people. And the people said to the king, well, you should put your daughter forward. It shouldn't just be us that have to sacrifice ourselves. So he did. He put his daughter forward, and that's when St. George came along and saw the distress of the people, saved the princess, and slayed the dragon. And that's his emblem there, the red cross. So it's the idea that it's good and evil again. It's always a dragon. It's always a reptile. On the right there, you've got St. Michael, who is pretty much the same character, but from the heavens. And his army slayed Satan's army. And there he is there with his sword slaying some demons. So again, Satan and the dragon, pretty much the same characters in terms of one's physical, the other one's part of the spiritual stories, and but it's the same story. It's about good versus evil, and it's about slaying the reptile, which is just your ego, and it's about a Christ-like figure rising above the ego or the reptilian mind, and the Christ-like figure is your consciousness. It is your higher thinking, your morals, and it's depicted by the sun or the light or the illuminate. You've been illuminated. That's what the sun. That's what these characters represent: slaying the ego, and the sun defeating the darkness. The sun, as in the sun in the sky. It's an ancient story about the sun defeating the darkness. It's just depicted in slightly different ways. And the cross, the red cross there, is an ancient, if you obviously on the right there, that's the sun cross, an ancient pagan symbol of the sun, adopted by Gnostics, neo-pagans, and occultists. So we live in a world controlled by the occult, and that's what the cross is. It's a sun cross. That's why you see that cross in the circle representing the sun going around the four seasons, and rebirth and darkness fallen, and then the light rising again. That's the sun cult that we live in. That's why you see that cross on church roofs and on gravestones. It's an ancient symbol of the sun. That's why the church congregation always points east. And that's what St. George is representative of, the sun. That's why he's got a blazing sun cross as his emblem, as his flag. And the 23rd of April is obviously it's following the spring. The sun is rising into the northern hemisphere. The sun is rising and it's defeating the darkness. That's what St. George's Day is. And that's why they've chose St. George's Day, because they are dimming the sun. So they are the evil is going to block out the sun. The evil draconian Satanists are blocking out the sun. That's why they did it on that day. So they've cooked the books with the whole climate change nonsense. And just to quickly cover this, this was from the Club of Rome, from the First Global Revolution, which was published in 1991. The common enemy is humanity. The common enemy or humanity is... I've got a mistake there. In search for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming or climate change, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In search for a new enemy. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all peoples. But in designating them as the enemy, we fall into the trap about which we have already warned, namely mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. Changed behaviors. The real enemy then is humanity itself. So these people are eugenicists, and this is where the whole Limits to Growth was another Club of Rome publication. This is where the whole population control obsession comes from, with the likes of Gates, and other people who talk about population control. Boris Johnson, who's got 6 or 7 kids at the last count, and the other one off the television, I can't recall his name, the wildlife presenter who's like 90 odd, is it Attenborough? He's quoted as saying, "There's not a single problem on Earth that wouldn't improve with fewer humans." This is eugenics in the form of population control, population reduction. That's all this is. That's what they want to do. And they are so convinced that we are the problem. I'm not convinced anything is going to stop them in their mission to reduce the population, which probably already started 5 years ago. We are in a period of population decline. We are being depopulated as we speak. Okay, that's the end of clarifications and opinions. Please join me in my next proper episode, which is covering the topic of morality in nature. Okay, thanks for tuning in. See you later.
The truth hurts because the truth